This video is brought to you by Straight Goods News, Canada's alternative online news source. Visit Straightgoods.ca.
My name's Samantha. I'm here for Straight Goods News at the University of Ottawa's Law Faculty with Christine Moore from Mining Watch Canada.
Jennifer Moore.
Sorry, with Jennifer Moore from Mining Watch Canada. If you can tell us a little bit more about your your role with Mining Watch and what brought you here to the Faculty of Law at the university.
Sure. I'm the Latin America Program Coordinator for Mining Watch Canada and was invited here by LALSA to present as part of this evening's event with Manuel Perez Rocha with the Institute for Policy Studies, looking at certainly the impacts of investor-state agreements and the Canadian mining sector in Latin America.
Now, some of the discussions that came up were in relevance to policy shifts that may have happened in the political center in Canada since the political shift in 2006. Can you elaborate a little bit about some of the comments that were made?
Sure. Since 2006, well, starting in 2006, there was a series of national roundtables in which there was active civil society, industry, and government participation to come up with a consensual report on what would be progressive reforms in Canada's regulatory and legislative regime for the extractive industry operating overseas. There was a consensual report that was tabled in 2007. It took the government 2 years to respond to that report, and the strategy paper that the government came out with was highly disappointing to civil society, was not reflective of the proposals that had been proposed, the proposals that had been agreed to, and rather was an affirmation of the status quo, which is corporate social responsibility, which I prefer to call corporate self-regulation, which is an absolutely ineffective way to manage and address the impacts that our extractive industry is having when it goes abroad and is operating overseas, both in terms of the environmental, social, and security of mine-affected communities in different parts of the region.
You also mentioned a piece of legislation that Peter Julian was trying to pass, C-323. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what you hope that it'll achieve in Canada?
Yeah. Bill C-323 is a proposal to implement modeled after the Alien Torts Act in the United States, which would create a forum for foreign citizens to be able to bring lawsuits in Canada against corporations when they commit egregious violations of their rights or of environmental devastation in other parts of the world. And currently it's very difficult for foreign citizens to seek justice against Canadian corporations in Canada. There's been a number of failed attempts, and there's a couple of creative attempts right now underway in Canadian courts, and this bill would try to create a forum for those citizens to bring those cases. What I would hope would happen with this law, I think under the current situation, seeing that there are not favorable conditions in the short term for its passage, that it could be an effective tool for us to keep the need for progressive legislative reform on the table in Canada, also to educate ourselves, other members of Parliament, other sectors of Canadian society, and the media about that need, and to ultimately gain enough support to perhaps be passed in the coming future.
In the coming future, where maybe it won't be.
Maybe it won't be the same.
Okay, great. And lastly, if you want to talk, maybe leave it on a positive note of some of the little victories that you described as a comment to someone's question.
Yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge that while there have been really serious and while there's ongoing violations of the rights of mine-affected communities throughout Latin America and here in Canada too, that we've seen important victories and I think demonstrations of the sort of direct democracy and alternatives that local communities and allied organizations at the local, national, and international level can create when they get together. And I think one example of that actually is in El Salvador, where the communities in Cabañas have actively resisted the development of a gold mine in their lands. They continue to suffer serious security threats in part as an outcome of that struggle, but they have managed to stave off the development of gold mining, which would pose a significant threat to an area where they already have scarce and fragile water resources. This is a small country that's roughly the size of Lake Ontario, dependent on a single watershed, and one of the one of the highest population densities in the region. And they've managed to also generate a national struggle to at least create a proposal to put the brakes on metal mining in the country. That hasn't been passed, but they've made it a national issue, and I do think that's also a victory for a social movement. And we have also seen, in the case of Costa Rica, for instance, they've actually implemented a law that would ban one of the most destructive forms of mining, open pit gold mining, and we're seeing in other parts of the region too examples of communities that have managed to stall or modify or stave off project expansions, such as right now actually in the northern part of Peru, where campesino communities have been fighting for the protection of their water supplies against the expansion of the biggest gold mine in Latin America, the Yanacocha mine, which is owned by an American company, Newmont. But through persistent demonstrations over recent months, they've managed to suspend and at the moment, at least ensure that there is going to be more rigorous evaluation of that project, and we'll see what happens in the near future.